Alright, today we're going to work through Concept 2 in our first unit. Concept 2 is reading graphs, and just like last time, we're going to start by going over our vocabulary terms for the concept. First one is x-axis. The x-axis is the section of the graph, the line of the graph that runs horizontally from left to right through the 0 point. So no matter what type of graph you have, whether you have a bar graph or a line graph, you're always going to have an x-axis, and that's always the line that goes from left to right across the bottom of the graph. The y-axis is the line on a graph that runs vertically up and down through 0. So y is up and down. You can remember this because the letter y is an up and down letter. A chart is a method that teachers or researchers or whoever uses to organize information in columns in order to solve problems or create graphs. So sometimes before you make a graph, it's easier to see all of your data if you create a chart. So this is a chart of favorite ice cream flavors of students. A line plot is a type of graph that shows frequency of data along a number line. So you see this number line across the x-axis. The category choices were running shoes, walking shoes, or tennis shoes, and each X represents one person. So they are charting the frequency. That means how often that choice was selected. A bar graph, certainly you know, is a graph drawn using rectangular bars to show how large each value is. The bars can be horizontal or vertical. So you can have a bar graph that looks like this, or you could have a bar graph that was rotated so that the bars come out from side to side like this, parallel to the x-axis. Okay, at this point, go ahead and stop and make sure that all of your vocabulary terms are recorded. And now we'll move on to what is data and how does it help you understand information. So data is all around us. Things like where you live, test scores, what you spend your money on, your favorite things, or things about yourself or your body, like your hair color, your eye color, your height. Anything that can be measured in a quantity. That's why I underlined the root quantit in quantitative. That means it can be counted. Data is any type of quantitative information about a particular topic. When we answer surveys, our answers are data. When you take a test, your scores become data that teachers and principals and school administrators look at. Data can be displayed in many ways. A chart and a graph are two common ways that data is shared with others. So how are tables or charts and graphs related? So like I mentioned when we were going through the vocabulary terms, mathematicians often create charts before they make their graphs. An example would be the research project that I'm working on right now. I gave my students a survey, and now I'm going to make a chart of their responses before I make a graph. That'll help me make sure that I have everybody's survey accounted for, and it helps me see some beginning thoughts about my data. Tables and charts can help mathematicians organize information and make sure that they have all the facts straight before they start creating a graph. How can data be shown in different ways? So we know that we have charts and graphs. Let's dig a little bit deeper into those two things. These are all types of graphs. Here's an example of a horizontal bar graph that I talked about a minute ago. You can see here that the bars are parallel to the x-axis instead of parallel to the y-axis like they are when you see what you probably consider a traditional bar graph. This circle graph is called a pie chart. You'll learn more about those probably in 4th and 5th grade math. This is a line plot. What you do is you mark a dot on each value. So I wanted to mark a 1, then I wanted to mark a 3, then I wanted to mark a 2. So you mark all your dots first, and then you draw the line across all the dots. And the last one is the line plot. That was one of your vocabulary terms. Go ahead and stop and answer the question on your S.S.S. now. You should have a question that is a fill in the blank. You should have a chart question that you need to read carefully and figure out if Jerry made a mistake or if he got it right. And then you need to identify the 3 types of graphs that are on your paper. Another way that we show data is through statistics. So here's some examples of statistics. 1 out of every 4 students at Summit Elementary listed Harry Potter as their favorite book. 95% of teachers say that their day runs more smoothly when they stop at Starbucks on the way to school. And there's been more snow this week than the past 5 weeks combined. These are statistics. They are informational sentences that include a statement of data. And the last thing we need to go over today is the parts of a graph. So here's a pretty traditional bar graph. You can see that my bar graph has a title. It has x-axis labels, because we know that the x-axis is the one that goes left to right, and it has y-axis labels. Looking a little more closely, there are a couple other things we need to notice. The creator of this bar graph labeled every category. We call those category labels, and they go across the x-axis. And we also have the y-axis labels, which this graph doesn't have any labels on here. In order to figure out how you're going to label your y-axis, you need to figure out your scale. So each section of the graph is worth a certain value. So this section from here to the bottom might represent 2 people who chose chocolate. Then from here to the bottom would represent 4 people. Here across this line would be 6 people, and here across this line would be 8 people. The important thing to realize is that you're always moving up in groups of 2. So if my scale is counting by 2s at the bottom, it has to be counting by 2s the whole way at the top. At this point, go ahead and do your summary in your S.S.S. For your summary today, I want you to draw a sketch of a bar graph. You don't have to make it perfect. You don't need to measure it, but just get all the pieces on there. Use your vocabulary terms to label the graph and write 3 sentences of the main ideas from this video. Here is your secret video tip that you only get by watching the video. Please create a fake bar graph about people's favorite type of shoes. So you could have your x-axis labels could be things like flip-flops or boots or snowshoes. You can choose other types of shoes, but please make your bar graph related to shoes. This will be my hint that you have watched the video. And the last thing I need for you to do is write a question that goes with this concept. It can be something that you're confused about, it can be a discussion prompt for us to go over in class, or it could be another example of using data or a bar graph in real life, or using data or any type of chart or graph in real life. That's all for today.